Hey everyone, welcome back to Deciding to Love. I'm your host, Nathan Holritz. Thanks so much for being here today. A couple of important notes before I share my conversation with Dr. Banks today. First of all, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear how the show is impacting you and if you have any feedback regarding the show. My email is nathan@decidingtolove.com. First of all, let me know if or how the show has impacted your life and your relationships. And then secondly, let me know if you have some suggestions, some ideas, some feedback on the show, whether it's the content itself, the format of the content, the guests that I'm having in the show, or otherwise. I want any and all of it, good and bad. I want you to give me that feedback. I'd love to hear from you. So please send me an email, nathan@decidingtolove.com. Look, I've benefited on multiple levels from putting out these first 13 episodes so far. But I need to make sure at the end of the day that I'm adding value to your life and to your relationships. So please let me know your thoughts. nathan@decidingtolove.com. Second note, and this is more of a reminder, but going into today's conversation, please keep an open mind. Please be curious. I can't stress enough. We should do a whole episode, just an idea of curiosity and how that relates to, certainly our experiences in life in general, but especially in the context of relationships. Curiosity enables us to be able to learn from a wide range of experiences and from a wide range of personalities, regardless if that person or those people have the same perspective on life, on the world, on religion, on relationships, or otherwise as ourselves. And in fact, I think we're missing out in life if we're not consistently exposing ourselves to differing perspectives so that we can learn from them and so that we can ultimately grow from them. So with that in mind, today's conversation has a bit more of a religious angle to it as we talk about this concept of long-term romantic relationships that are going to be vibrant in nature. And I'm not religious. You may be surprised at that because a lot of the conversation that we've had here on the podcast so far has had some religious angle to it. I'm not religious, but I'm going to tell you, this is one of the most powerful, I think, conversations that I've had on the podcast so far. I got excited listening to it in preparation for the edit. There is some wonderful wisdom innate to this conversation. And if, for those of you who are not religious, if you start to hear some of the religious conversation and you just kind of shut it off or you give up because you're like, I can't relate to that, you're going to miss out on some real wisdom when it comes to how to create vibrant long-term romantic relationships. In particular, the idea of principle over feeling and the reality, which is that relationships don't have to be complicated. I know that might sound surprising, especially in the context of long-term romantic relationships, but we talk about that. So keep an open mind, be curious. You're going to benefit not just here at this show, but in life in general for being more curious. And I'm preaching myself there as well. But be curious and enjoy this conversation with Dr. David Banks.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Deciding to Love. I'm your host, Nathan Holritz. It is good to have you here today, and it is especially good to have Dr. David Banks here with me today. Thank you, Dr. Banks, for making the time. I know I said this before we got started. I'll reiterate it again. I really appreciate the opportunity not only to chat with you, but just your graciousness in making time to do this today. Thank you so much.
But Nathan, it is my pleasure. Yes, looking forward to this discussion, and I'm excited about it.
Well, and I want to just start. I know it's a bit cliche to start with introductions, but I think it's extremely important to give context to this conversation here. And I think this is kind of an interesting dynamic that you bring to the show. Certainly, I'm interviewing couples to discuss their experience in a long-term romantic relationship. I have had the opportunity to interview a therapist now as well. You have a therapy background, but you're also a business coach, and I think it's a very interesting combination. So maybe you can just give a little background to that dynamic that you bring today.
Excellent. Well, early in the 90s, I think 96 is when I got my PhD at that time in psychology with marriage and family. And as I was kind of really figuring out, what do I want to do with it? So I did not want to go the licensed psychologist, psychiatrist route, but I really enjoyed working with couples. I met my bride, Lady Sylvia. We met in college, and she's from India. So, when we first met each other, it wasn't love at first sight. Nathan, what really brought us together, we were friends, and I remember her and I taking a walk. I didn't know much about the Indian culture because where I grew up, the small town I grew up, there was no Indians. So from talking to her, she was just really had a passion for marriages.
Hmm.
In their culture back then, probably still now, they were arranged marriages. Like her parents shared with them that one day her mother came home from work, walked in the house, saw this little skinny Indian guy sitting on the couch, and she's like, "Mom, who is this? Oh, this is this is going to be your husband." So
Wow.
they introduced each other, and then the next time they saw each other was at the altar.
Hmm.
Now their marriage lasted over 50 years. But Nathan, that's not always the case. So she
Hmm.
shared with me a lot of her relatives got arranged, but
Hmm.
all of them didn't turn out well. But at that time, if they got divorced, that was like a death sentence for a woman.
Hmm.
A man, he could go on and marry someone else, but for a woman, a divorced woman, nobody would want to marry her. And I looked in my background, I looked at my parents. My parents were married over 40 something years. But as far as being intentional,
Hmm.
it's just like we're married, we're supposed to have kids, and we're supposed to provide for them. That's it.
Hmm.
And I saw my uncles and aunts and the relationship they had. So that is really what brought us closer. We just like, wow, both of us have a real passion for marriage and relationship. Hey, why
Hmm.
don't we do it together? So that's what we did. So,
Okay, I already have. If you don't mind me interrupting for just a second, I've got a couple of questions because you've said a couple of things that are really interesting to me. First of all, you mentioned the word intentional, and I'm going to come back to that probably even as a theme through our conversation today, because I think really at the root, at least from my limited experience, 46 years of life, a couple of long-term relationships, one of those a marriage actually as well. It seems like intention is at the root of the ability to create an enjoyable long-term romantic relationship. But before we even get there, you said something that really caught my attention, which was that it was not love at first sight with your wife. And remind me of her name one more time.
Sylvia.
Sylvia. So you said not love at first sight with your wife. It was based in friendship. But I think maybe there's an assumption a lot of times. In fact, a lot of people's experience is that, the initial butterflies that happen when you first meet that person in the first couple of dates, maybe even the first few months, even first few years, that just intense level of feeling and desire and excitement. But you said it wasn't love at first sight for you. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah. Now let me tell you the backstory.
Okay.
My wife is 2 years older.
Okay.
So when she was in college, freshman in college, I was just finishing up high school. So
Wow.
there was a college weekend where high school students could come and just kind of check out the school. So I attended that weekend. Now, the person I was staying with in the dorm had a directory. So I'm just flipping through the directory, and Nathan, oh my God, when I saw her in the directory, Sylvia Saganadam. I was like, oh my God, this is the most beautiful woman I ever seen in my life. So, so the next day, I am in the lunch line, and guess who I saw in the lunch line? Sylvia. Now I am 5'6'5". I'm 6'5". She's
Yeah.
5'2". So I
Yeah.
want to just encourage men who are tall, do not do what I did. I just walked up behind her, and I'm six
Whoa.
five, never met me, never seen me, and I just
Yeah.
said, "Hello, Sylvia." And she turned around like, who in the world is this person? That was not a good introduction.
Okay.
Oh, that just did not work out too well. She was praying,
When
oh my God, I hope this guy never comes back to this school. But hey,
Well, yeah, when you and I first met, I certainly I was struck by your height, but it naturally brings a certain charisma, I think, to a conversation. I think layered on top of that is you just have a very kind smile. You have a very warm presence about you, very calm, very collected, if you will. And so I'm sure in most conversations, it's actually a welcome thing. People feel comfortable with you, but probably caught her off guard, not knowing that you were coming up behind her like that.
yes, yes. So again, so after, when I did end up coming there, we just, like I said, we just started connecting. And I just said, hey, you want to go take a walk? And through that, and I know because, I've been in this field, sometimes when people feel like, well, I didn't get this sparks and all of that, they think,
Mm,
and see, this is where things go wrong, Nathan, because most people think, well, if it started like that, it needs to be forever like that.
mm,
And I think that's where couples, because I've had couples to come, after all of that is gone and
mm,
wears off, then they start questioning,
mm,
well, are we right? And see, they start seeking that.
mm,
If that happens to you, I always tell couples, if that happens to you, you got to know how to sustain it.
mm,
But if it doesn't happen like that, because ultimately, Nathan, relationship was really designed by principles,
mm,
not passion.
mm,
We've made it to think that it has to be this, the passion, the stars, but relationship was really ultimately set up by principles
mm.
and really not completing each other. Because sadly, most people go in a relationship to see what they can get out of it. So if
Mm.
you got two people focusing on, I remember I was doing a relationships seminar, and I gave both couples two empty bags. And I said, all right, I want you to go into this relationship and see what you can get. Okay. If you have two people with empty bags, the guy's saying, all right, I need you to fill my bag. I need you to tell me who I am, love me. She's saying,
Mm.
I need you. Okay. Just think, Nathan, you got two people with empty bags thinking what they're going to get out of the relationship. Talk to me. How's that going to work? Did anybody
Yeah.
bring anything? No, because and that's the disappointment that couples get into. They go into it thinking what they can get out of it instead of realizing relationship was really designed to come and complement what you already know about yourself.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. That's a deep one. I don't think I've heard quite that angle before. I want to come back to that, thinking about kind of where we're going in the conversation. Before we do, let me just ask you, I want to share, I did this actually in the last episode with Judy Herman, who's a therapist that came on the show recently. And this is a statement I want to kind of get your take on. And I'll go ahead and add the caveat here, which is that I'm a bit of a minimalist, a simplicity freak, if you will, in my day-to-day life. Certainly in how I approach my personal life, how I approach my business, my workflows. And so I like to try to distill things down, kind of 80-20 principle, if you will. So I'll add that caveat before I make this statement for anybody who hasn't heard it before. But here's a take, and I want to get your honest, no BS take on this statement. And that is, a long-term romantic relationship should be simple, not easy. Commit, decide to love, and then proactively and collectively figure it out on an ongoing basis. Everything else is just us adding our baggage to the mix and complicating things unnecessarily. So this is, again, my simplistic take, and certainly I'm not an expert and not a professional like yourself, but with your experience, not only in the psychology world, but also with your long-term relationship, what's your take on that statement?
I totally agree. Relationship should be simple,
Hmm.
but unfortunately, you have two insecure people coming into a
Mm.
relationship wanting to get validation and all of these things. That is what complicates things because you're going into it with the wrong concept. The guy is going to it. I don't know myself, so I'm going to get in this relationship and I need her to tell me who I am. Okay. Look, what is she doing? Well, I'm insecure, so I'm coming in this relationship expecting him. And see, we got all of this complication stuff. Well,
Yeah.
I don't understand. How come you don't? And see, it's just And when I hear people like, man, relationships is complicated. No, no, it's not complicated.
Hmm.
But you do need to understand, hint, some principles.
Hmm.
You need to understand that the person that you're in a relationship with, they are not in the relationship to validate who you are. That's
Mhm.
not the responsibility.
Mm.
They are here to complement who you are, but
Mm.
they're not here to validate. Because as long as you're trying to get them to validate and you don't believe it, you hear it all the time. Well, tell me I'm awesome. You're awesome. Ah, you're just saying it. Okay, you just told me to tell. Well, tell me I'm beautiful. Well, you're beautiful. Well, why are you telling me now? It's just this huge circus
Mm.
that relationships, couples are in, and it's just an ongoing thing. And that's why I'm glad I'm in this space, Nathan, to really help couples realize, guys, I had a couple last night. Both of them are expecting, but no one is taking the initiative.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. There again, you're saying a variety of things here, and I'd love to follow this rabbit trail and that, but I'm going to kind of try to keep us focused because you actually did a beautiful job of creating the segue into my next question. You reiterated the significance of principles,
Yes.
and just to kind of keep the conversation simple, let's talk about, say, 3 key principles that you think, based on, again, your personal experience, but also your experience in therapy and counseling over the years, that you think would help couples create a, not just existing as roommates long-term romantic relationship, but something that's enjoyable. I'm with you in that I don't think there should be a default expectations that on a day-to-day basis there is some intense, beautiful rainbows and stars and unicorns and so forth. But at the same time, feel free to push back on this. I can't imagine wanting to be in a relationship with somebody where I'm just existing as a glorified roommate. Is there some balance to be had there, I guess, before we get into the principles?
Very much so. Very much
Okay.
so. A healthy relationship is ever evolving. You're constantly getting to know each other, finding new things about each other. So it's when you set it right with the right principles.
Hmm.
My wife and I have been married for 35 years.
Amazing.
When people looked at us and think, well, Dr. Banks, you're African American, come from a very small, rural town. Your wife is Indian, lived and born in Ethiopia because her parents were missionaries in Ethiopia. So
Wow.
Nathan, we had people looking at us like scratching their head, like, how in the world is this relationship? They are totally, totally opposite people.
Yeah.
How in the world? But we just realized a long time ago, long as we have some principles,
Okay.
we can make this work.
Okay.
And here we are 35 years later, and we best friends. Is wonderful, is ever evolving. We're excited. June 30th, we love June because June 30th is our anniversary. So we
Amazing.
just can't wait to step into the 36th year.
That's so cool, man. Well, I have to say, again, before we get into the principles, I do have one other question because, again, you keep kind of piquing some ideas and thoughts in my mind as we're talking. There is something you talked earlier about the insecurities that both individuals bring to the relationship. And I can certainly speak from personal experience that I've had endless insecurities that even if I wasn't conscious of it, I was expecting the other person to kind of address, right? And to your point, not a healthy mindset or mentality to have. And I can say, even in the last, say, 6 months or so, as I'm continuing to do a lot of internal work coming out of a long-term relationship, hard lessons learned, and still learning, honestly. One of the biggest changes or shifts that I've made is just to simply take ownership and responsibility for my own issues. And I thought I was that kind of person before, but then I realized that I hadn't done the extent of the work that I needed to in that regard. At 46, it's embarrassing to say, but also I think important to acknowledge and to note, especially for those listening in, that a lot of times it's us that's getting in the way of a good relationship. And the expectation that you talked about of the other person to kind of meet our, or to solve our issues rather than taking responsibility for those issues ourselves. So I guess that's kind of a loaded conversation in of itself. But where I wanted to go with this is, you and I both come. I don't remember if we talked about this specifically, but you talked about your wife's family being missionaries in Ethiopia. My parents, I grew up in Japan, so I come from a missionary background as well. So I come from a religious world where there's this conversation about, and I think maybe it's a reference. This is terrible that I don't remember, but a reference to some scripture, where the idea of two becoming one.
Yes.
And at least in the Christian world, what has been done at times is that phrase or that passage has been taken and applied almost literally to the extent that these two people are no longer individuals. Kind of to your earlier point about not taking responsibility for themselves, these two are becoming one, and there's this codependent behavior that develops in the relationship. I know this is a side note. It wasn't on the outline that I sent to you, but I'm just curious if you can comment on that idea, especially for those that are in the Christian world that hear that phrase or that idea thrown out a lot.
Excellent. Great. So yes, the scripture, Genesis 2:24, therefore shall a man leave his father and mother, cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. One flesh. I think people forget the flesh, one flesh.
Okay.
That basically means you are two individual whole person coming together and really look at that oneness as agreement. That you're coming together in agreement, not agreeing on everything, but you're coming together to agree that we're going to make this work. We're going to establish some principles that we can live by and live out. So you're never going to lose your individuality in a healthy relationship. Now, in insecure relationships, yeah, you're trying to get the other person to be what you want them to be.
Yeah.
But in a healthy, whole relationship, it is really understanding who you are and just really complementing and both working together to really create a powerful force.
I was making notes as you were talking here. You talked about that dynamic of two insecure individuals, and what I wrote down was get them to be what you want them to be. It's this weird kind of controlling behavior or mindset. Again, I think a lot of people, I know I've been guilty of it, that behavior without being cognizant of the fact that I was doing it. It's the sense of control to address my insecurity. And then when that doesn't play out well, I blame it on the other person, ironically, and it just turns into this absolute jumbled mess.
That's right. So true. That's right. That is right.
But I love you mentioned the word principles again. And so I appreciate you kind of keeping us on track and on focus. There's so much I'd love to talk about here, but let's talk about those principles. So just keeping it really straightforward, kind of old school, almost sermon like, 3 key principles or ideas that will enable couples or partners in a long-term romantic relationship to create something not just that exists, but that is vibrant in nature. What's the first one?
I'm ready. Oh, I'm ready. All right. The first thing, Nathan, is I call it individual wholeness. Individual wholeness. Going back to, the Christian focus, in Genesis 2:7, it says, when God formed man from the dust of the ground, breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, man became a living being. All right. So Nathan, if someone is in front of you, breathing into your nostrils, when your eyes open up, who is the first person you're going to see?
That person.
That person. You see? So basically, the way everything started, when God breathed into Adam the breath of life, when his eyes opened, the first person he saw was God. Why was that? Why was that important? For Adam to understand, before I see anything, because it says God took the man and put him in the garden. So when he was created, he didn't see his wife and he didn't see his assignment. Only person he saw first was the one who created him. Why was that important? Because he wanted Adam to see, Adam, your identity does not come from your relationship. Your identity doesn't come from your work. Your identity comes from me. So before I create anything else, I need you to understand where your identity and source comes from. It comes from me.
Okay.
All right. So it's very important first for a man to understand his identity before he ever gets in a relationship. Yeah. He needs to understand, I'm a man, and here are some qualities. I want you to write this down. Here are some qualities that he placed in a man.
Okay.
1, huge quality is purpose. The reason why he needs to exist. Another quality is courage. Courage is the ability to confront things. Even though fear is around you, you still have the courage to deal with it. Another one is authority. Now, why authority? Because the authority is not to control something, but to establish something. So going back to Genesis 2, after God says, it's not good for you to be alone, Genesis 2:19 says, God brought all the animals to Adam to see what he would name them. And whatever Adam named each animal, that was his name. See that? He was basically helping Adam to activate, Adam, whatever you establish, that's what it's going to be. And then the last quality is discernment.
Okay.
Now, what is discernment? Discernment is to be able to know what the original is versus what's fake. Discern means to be able to look at something and determine this is real, this is not. Every man has that ability. But as you can see, men don't live by these. They live by their senses.
Yeah.
Right? So that's very important for a man to understand his identity first. All right, let's go to the woman. Now, look at the woman. It says God put the man to sleep. Now, did God have to do that? Absolutely not. But he did it on purpose. He put the man to sleep, took the rib, and then created a woman. All right. When he created a woman and breathed in her nostrils, Nathan, who did she see first? Who's standing in front of her, breathe into her nostrils?
God.
God. So why is that set up that way? Because God wanted both of them to understand that their identity comes from him and not each other. So before they ever met each other, they already knew who they were and they know who created them. You see that? So for a woman, all right, I gave qualities for a man. Here are some qualities for a woman. First is purpose. That's the first essential thing in every human being. Purpose, the reason why they exist. All right. The next thing for a woman is this thing called virtue. Now, what is virtue? Virtue is a wealth of resources. Now, Nathan, the best picture I can come up with is a treasure chest. So every woman needs to understand embedded inside of her is a treasure chest full of treasures. Now, what are these treasures? Determination, creativity, intelligence. All of those qualities are built in a woman. Another one is influence. Influence is the power to set an atmosphere. So not only does a woman have a treasure chest inside of them, I think another beautiful expression is like a scented candle. All right. So you could have a candle somewhere in the room.
I find it entertaining that we're not making that comparison with men. Somehow men don't bring the scented candle vibes to the room.
No. We're talking about the woman now. We're talking about the woman. So it's just like you walk in a room, it gives a fragrance. You may not know where that fragrance is, but you smell it. A woman has that. She has the power. And also, Nathan, God created every woman beautiful. Every woman is beautiful, naturally beautiful. So when I'm working with couples, the first thing that I'm doing is I'm helping them. I meet with them individually because I need them to get this. I need the man to own this instead of waiting for her to tell him this. Well, if he doesn't know it and she's telling him, gonna miss it. That's why I tell ladies, when your husband say you're beautiful, say thank you. Stop saying, well, why are you saying this? You just say thank you. Because when he stops saying it, because you don't receive it, it misses. So the first principle to develop a healthy, long, romantic relationship, you got to know you. You got to know you.
Yeah. Yeah. This really, and before we go to the next big principle, I've been taking, for anybody who's watching, I told Dr. Banks before we got started, I'm old school. So I've got this notebook here. So I'm taking notes. If you see me look to the side, that's what I'm doing. But you mentioned the significance of purpose for both men and women to begin with. And again, a lot of lessons learned for me, particularly in the last 3 to 6 months or so. And one of the things that has just really I've been reminded of over and over and over again is the significance of that purpose. My biggest weakness probably over the last number of years, or certainly one of them, has been, again, these kind of codependent tendencies in the context of a relationship. And I can speak to the psychology, but I'm sure you could too. The psychology of where that comes from. I've better grown to understand that. But now, of course, trying to make my way out of that tendency, one of the things that I realized, again, to your point, is the significance of individual purpose.
That's
and
right.
Not only do I exist in a better mental, psychological state when I have a clear purpose and set of goals that I'm working toward that have little to nothing to do with my partner. But then as I understand it, and maybe you can comment again from your professional experience on this, but as I understand it, there is also a certain draw that the guys create having that sense of purpose,
right.
that it tends to attract women more so than, ironically, when the man is 100% all about her. Can you maybe share your thoughts on that?
You got it. You got it.
Okay.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Let me give you a story. I was
Okay.
working with a single lady, and she was just like, I'm not good at relationships. I'm not doing it right. I said, all right, let's discover your purpose fingerprint. All right. Because let me do a 30-second side trail. There are three
Okay.
dimensions of purpose.
Okay.
The first one is called purpose blueprint.
Okay.
Purpose blueprint is the universal purpose for everyone. Everyone is placed on this earth to impact someone else in a positive manner. That's the purpose blueprint for every human. All right. We all have that in common. You and I, everybody else who's listening. The second one is called purpose fingerprint. Now, purpose fingerprint, Nathan, is what sets you apart from anybody in the world. Your fingerprint. As you know, Nathan, no one has your fingerprint. So that's what I do. I help people discover their purpose fingerprint, because once you have that, oh my goodness, you are set to understand there is nobody. People can do things similar, but no one can do it like me, because no one has your purpose fingerprint. And then the third one is purpose footprint.
Okay.
Purpose footprint is once your purpose is discovered, it is like a built-in navigation system. It will make sure and navigate you to be properly positioned where you can live out your purpose. Now, I've been studying purpose for over 30 years. Your purpose has an internal radar and also a traction sensor. So once you open up your purpose, it starts attracting people or retracting people. So when I helped this single lady discover her purpose was basically, she loves empowering children. I'll say that, to empower children to live. And I said, now use your purpose fingerprint as your filter when you are dating. Nathan, she went out on a date with the guy, and she simply said, how do you feel about children? Nathan, he said, oh my God, I hate children.
Oh no.
I hate children. Oh my God. Nathan, all she said was, thank you. That was the end of the date. Didn't pursue. And she said, Dr. Banks. Now, she said, this guy, he smelled good. He looked good.
Yeah.
He sounded good.
Yeah.
But she realized if I got with this guy, there would be no way we could make this relationship. You see this, Nathan?
Yeah.
So I tell people, I'm June 27th, I'm going to do a master class
Okay.
for singles.
Okay.
It's called Kingdom Principles for Singles, because too many single people are spending all of their time looking for the right one. And I need to say, guys, you need to stop,
Mm.
because you don't get what you want. You get what you attract.
Mm.
And
And
I
at least
need
part of
to
that
know.
attraction mechanism is being clear on your value set and on ultimately your purpose, as you described, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the first one. Individual design. That's the first principle to develop a healthy, long relationship.
Can I
All
ask
right.
you one more question on that?
Go right ahead.
And I'm keeping an eye on the time here. I'm going to respect your time, but on that, one of the other things that you mentioned as it relates to qualities of a guy and this notion of individual wholeness is the significance of authority. And I think you kind of alluded to this, but I'm going to get your take on this. Again, coming from, I don't really exist in the religious world at this point, but I certainly come from an extensive background in that regard. And I understand the narrative a lot of times when it comes to the notion of authority and how that is, I think, abused and misused a lot of times.
Very much so. Very much
When
so.
you talked about that idea of authority, the word, as you began to describe it, the word that came to mind was leadership. And would you say that that's a good almost synonym in that context, or what's your take on that?
I think it is important, but even the word leader, all right, because I've done marriage seminars and I tell the
Yeah.
men, all right, because see, there is something in psychology called word association.
Mm-hmm.
So if I say, men, you are the leader, you are leading, then what are you expecting for your partner? And all of the men yell out, follow. And I said, man, let me let you see how that looks. So I have a couple to come up, have the
Yeah.
man to stand, he's facing one way, and I have his wife to stand behind him. I said, see, this is what you are saying. If I'm leading, she's following. That's out of order. That's not why she didn't come from your back. She came from your side. So I would say the best thing to say is initiative.
Hmm.
Initiative.
I like that. Okay.
That's the biggest focus that a woman needs, because going back, Genesis 2:18, it says it's not good for man to be alone. I will make a what? Helper.
Mm-hmm.
Helper. So
Mm-hmm.
Nathan, if I said, Nathan, can you come to my office and help me?
Mm.
He's like, okay, sure. All right. So you come to my office and say, all right, Dr. Banks, I'm ready to help you. But Nathan, what do you need before you can help? Don't you need some instructions?
Yeah, hopefully.
He's like, okay, Dr. Banks, what do you want me to do? And I
Yeah.
say to you, Nathan, I don't know what I'm doing. Nathan, you can't help. So first I have to take the initiative to say, Nathan, this is what we're doing. We're kind of switching out some furniture in my office. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
now since you took the initiative and given me some information, I can help you.
Yeah.
I remember I did a seminar in Florida, 50 couples, Nathan. And I said, men, this is what I want you to do. I want you to look at your wife and I want you to say, let's go for a ride. So all of the men looked at his wife and say, let's go for a ride. And I said, on the count of three, ladies, I'm not even going to tell you what to say. And I said, 1, 2, 3, all 50 ladies looked at their husband and said this, where are we going?
Mm.
Nathan, look at that.
Mm-hmm.
And the men looked at me and was like, Dr. Bates, how did you know? I'm like, she's a helper. Helper can only operate when somebody takes the initiative.
Well, and the other thing that came to mind earlier, and even as you're describing that scene just now, is I think again, when in the context of that notion, the idea of authority, where it's been misused and abused, the synonym that those people are putting in place there is the idea of control.
That's
They
right.
assume that because they are, quote, the authority, that they now get to control the other person. And I think that's a lot of where the kind of
That's where it's
misjudgment
going
and
wrong.
ultimately abuse of the situation comes in.
Exactly. So when I tell men, when I say you have the power of authority, is you need to take the initiative. Because look what happened, going back to Genesis. When God took the rib, made the woman, and brought her to the man, it says, Adam said, "You're bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh." She didn't have to ask the question. She didn't have to say, well, how do you feel about me? Or do you still think I'm pretty? You never seen me like this. You've only seen me as a rib.
Yeah.
She didn't have to ask anything. Why? Because he took the initiative. And I always say, men, the best thing to do is stop trying to be smart and be wise. Oh, Nathan, you got to write that down. You got to write that down.
Okay.
Stop
Okay.
trying to be
We
smart.
need a t-shirt from that one. Yeah.
Stop trying to be smart. And no, what is smart? Smart basically means I know everything and you don't. Being wise is say, I know what I know, but I also know what you bring. And I said, the best thing that a man can do in a healthy marriage is to say this phrase, is to look at her and say this, I need your help to work with me to make this marriage the best ever. Nathan, I've had men to do that in seminars, and guess what the women are doing? They're crying, thinking, that's all I wanted. That's all I wanted.
To work together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when I say a man has the power of authority, is he's setting the path. He's establishing the path, because the word lead comes from the word path. You establishing a path. So men have to say, honey, we're going to create a path for our relationship. I need your insight because I am the leader. So I'm looking at the end. We're going to have a great marriage, but you bring the details of how we're going to do that. And you have the influence of how we can bring that to pass. That's why we're going to be a perfect match.
Okay.
Here's one more thing before we go to the next one. Look at the word submission. All right? Because men love that word.
Yeah, they do.
All right. Men love that word. Oh my God. Woman, you need to submit. I said, men, write the word down. Submission. Submission. What does that mean? Sub means support. Support what?
The mission.
The mission.
That's interesting.
Men, if you sit down with your wife and say, let's establish a vision and mission for our marriage. Let's work together. And you get her input. I've asked every single woman, all around the world, if your husband came and presented this, initiated this, would you feel like a doormat that he's running over you, he's controlling you? Every woman I've ever met, they said, Dr. Banks, no. I would be more than willing to extend my help to him to make this a better marriage. Why? Because not only he's going to get good out of it, so am I. You see? So that's the first one, individual.
Okay.
All right, let me give you the second one.
Sounds good.
Now, I like visuals, and I want couples to understand that they need to look at their relationship like a garden. Like a garden. Isn't it interesting that the first relationship in the Bible was set in a garden? Now, why? Well, one thing you know about a garden, it grows. And it doesn't grow overnight. So I help couples understand whatever they want in their relationship, they got to plant a seed. Because I've had so many couples doing premarital counseling. Oh, Dr. Banks, I can't wait till we get married. Man, we're going to have great sex. We're going to talk. We're going to just have fun. We're going to communicate about everything. And then after they get married, 6 months in, how are things going? Well, Dr. Banks, I thought we were supposed to have great sex. I thought with this, where is it? I said, this is the only thing. Before you got married, you looked over into your marriage and saw this plush garden of great sex and this, but you didn't ever plant the seed.
Wow.
You don't plant it, you're not going to see. So that's another thing couples are missing, Nathan. They assume because they love each other, all of these things are supposed to happen.
Just automatically.
Just automatic. Why? Because we love each other. Oh my
Yeah.
God, Nathan, that is so wrong.
Yeah.
Whatever you want in your relationship, you have to be intentional to start discussing it, how we're going to plan it. And that's why couples, they get disappointed because they thought, well, I thought this was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Now, here's the issue. Since whatever has modeled before them as they grew up, I had a couple this week. They've been married, man, well over 30 years.
Okay.
Nathan, his mother was very nurturing with verbal affirmations. Man, she just, oh, my son. Oh, my son.
Yeah.
All right. So because he loved her and she loved him, he assumed that after he got married, his wife would take up that.
Interesting.
Okay. Her father and her mother was not like that. Her father, he was a physician. He wasn't verbal. The mother, the woman's mother was kind of hey, let's talk. Let's get it done. More work. Let me work. So she came in the relationship expecting, hey, I need him to show me. You see what happened? Now he's thinking, hey, where are all those flowery words? She's like, flowery words? I ain't grow up like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why they're sitting in my office, because now they're disappointed. Because he was thinking I thought I was going to get all of these flowery things from her. Why? Because my mother did it.
Because that's the pattern that I know. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I do. I help couples. All right, I help couples develop, if they are dating, a relationship vision, or if they're married, a marriage vision. Something, because that vision statement is your seed that you plant in the relationship.
I love that. I love that.
Oh,
Yeah.
man,
And
it's working.
I think you kind of alluded to this earlier, but it's easy too when you talk about, like, I'm so excited about this relationship. The sex is going to be great. We're going to spend time together. We're going to create these memories and have all these things. And that initial honeymoon phase, quote unquote, that people have, however long that may last, a lot of times can kind of override or blind them to the reality of the work that it's going to take to actually create that for the long term.
Exactly.
So going into the relationship, understanding that to our earlier conversation, it's simple, not necessarily easy. In order to create this relationship that we really enjoy for the long term, we have to have the expectation that it takes time. We have to plant the seed, or plant the seeds, to get that long term, that big picture that we actually want.
Exactly.
And the fact that you work with couples to establish that vision at the outset, I think is something, honestly, I don't hear that discussed very much. I really like that. It's, I know that you work also as a business coach. And so this is where I think it becomes very interesting, where the two worlds kind of collide. But that's more the way that a business owner, you hear business coaches talking to business owners about how to approach going into starting a business or into entrepreneurship, is to come up with a long-term vision and then come up with a set of goals that outline their next actions.
Exactly.
But I think taking a similar approach to relationship is a really great idea. What does that look like when you're working with the couples? How do you establish that?
Oh, man. All right. I'll give you the quick version.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So let me show you now. When my wife and I first got married, we didn't know any of this. All right. The pastor that was going to marry my wife and I, he was about 60 or 70, been married 40 something years. we were young in college, never been married, naive. So he took us out to eat and he said 2 questions. Do you love each other and do you love God? So we said yes to both. So he said, if you love God and love each other, you're not going to have any problems. Now we looked at each other after we left like, seriously? But hey, how can we refute somebody that's been married?
Right.
So we realized, oh my God. All right. So 4 years in our marriage, we got married June 30, 1990. 4 years,
Okay.
Nathan, we struggle. We struggle because he didn't take in account there are some cultural differences that we had to address. So I remember in 94, my wife and I sat down and we said, this is not working. This is not working. We didn't sign up for this. Because I had expectations, she did too. But again, we walking into it with 2 empty bags thinking, all right, Sylvia, you need to feel mine. She's thinking, okay, we realized, oh my God, we got 2 empty bags, but nothing to put in them. So but we decided, hey, we're going to make this work. Separation, divorce was not an option. We're going to make this work. We don't know what we're doing. So I said, hey, let's go for a ride. He's like, oh, okay. Now, Nathan, that ride changed everything. Nathan, this is what happened. We were at a red light. We looked over to the right and there was a sign that basically says something is coming here, like a grocery store. So the sign had the picture of the grocery store, the parking lot, people. It was this is what this is going to be. Now, when we looked out at the field, it was just dirt. But that sign said, this is what it's going to be. And I looked at my wife and I said, do we have a sign like that for our marriage?
That's cool.
And we said, no. So we start asking couples. We only been married 4 years, so we start asking couples, do y'all have a marital vision? Do y'all have a marriage? Nobody's like, no. It's like, nobody. There was no books about it. There was no seminars about it. So he's like, all right, both of us are psych majors. Let's see if we can put our head together and pull it off.
Yeah.
So we decided, all right. So we said this, and we just trial and error, Nathan, just trial and error. So this is what we came up. We said, all right, why don't we individually write down things of what we want our marriage to become? And we're like, okay, that sounds good. So she went off, wrote some things down. I wrote some things down, and we came back together. So I shared my list with her. She shared her list with me.
Okay.
And then we said, all right, why don't we find a word between 4 and 6 letters that can kind of be the word, be our word,
Sum up
be
the
our
vision.
marital statement.
Okay.
So we was like, well, we both love studying Adam and Eve because like, hey, that's the first couple. So let's figure out what they did well and figure out what they messed up on. So we said, wow, well, why don't we, hey, Eden, it's 4 letters.
Okay.
Why don't that be our word? So we said, all right, Eden, that's what we want. Now, check this out, Nathan. Eden is our word, but we made an acrostic of how we're going to have an Edenic marriage. All right. So E of Eden stands for enter into oneness. So every day we are intentional about making sure we maintain our oneness. So every day, end of every day, we hold hands and we spend time talking to keep that closeness. You see? So enter into oneness. All right. D is delightful atmosphere. Delightful atmosphere is how we treat each other and how we talk to each other. So every day we're intentional to make sure we are kind, we give compliments, we flirt, knowing our love languages. So every day we're intentional. All right. The next E is empowering others. That is a passion for us because we realize that holds us accountable. It's hard for me to work with a couple to help them to have a good marriage, and my marriage is messed up. So that's kind of an accountability. It keeps us on our toes. And
Yeah, and
then,
wouldn't you say too that, I mean, it's so easy, especially in modern first world culture, where relatively speaking, we have it really, really easy, right? Compared to a lot of the world, most of the world even. And so we spend so much time thinking about ourselves, or even in the context of a relationship, thinking about each other, and there's no outward focus where we're focused on serving other people.
that's right.
I think that can create a lot of unnecessary problems in our life and in our relationship. Whereas if, to your point, and again, I'm taking notes as you're talking here, but you're thinking about how collectively we can empower others, how we can serve others. I think it could bring wonderful dynamic to the relationship.
Oh, it does. And how that has helped us is to realize, man, some of the things that we're dealing with versus what other people are dealing with.
Yeah.
Oh man, we got
Exactly.
inconveniences. We don't have problems. We
Perspective.
got inconvenience. So it keeps us on our toes and also grateful, you know?
That's good. That's good.
And then
Okay.
the N in Eden is new treasures found daily.
Hmm.
So as you hear, I use the word intentional a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because that right there is what couples lose. They start off intentional and they move into assumptions.
Yeah.
They start assuming she knows I love her. He knows he's awesome. Do I
Yeah.
have to tell them? No, they know it. Now, when they
Mhm.
mess up, I'll speak up. But long as they know you're thinking what they're doing is well, I don't need to speak. That's where it's messed up. And that we developed that Eaton in 1994.
Hmm.
And we still live by it today.
Love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Planting a seed for that long-term vision. We're not going to, but we could literally stop the conversation now. To me, that's the massive takeaway, because I really don't think enough couples are thinking about it from that perspective. Again, this is where I love the business coaching element of your life and your profession that you bring to this conversation. I'm an entrepreneur of 20 plus years at this point, so I have a lot of experience in that world. And I think the combination of those things, creating that long-term vision for the relationship, and then almost working backwards from that, thinking about the steps, the next actions that we can take in order to create that
That's right.
on an ongoing basis, it's super, super important. That's really powerful. Okay, so the importance of planting a seed for the long term. And then what's the third
Exactly.
big principle?
Yeah. All right. The third one. All right. The third principle of how to have a long, healthy, awesome romantic relationship is to understand the principle of communication. Is understand every couple, Nathan, that sits in my office on that couch and ask them, how can I help you? What's going on? They always say one thing, Dr. Banks, communication. Communication. And I've heard that for 30 years. And I remember one time a couple came in and said, all right, Dr. Banks, I'm asking them, what's going on? Well, communication. Nathan, this is what I said. I said, all right, this is what I want y'all to do. I want y'all to spend time talking to each other about how you both have communication issues. Nathan, what did they do? They talk to each other.
Mm.
And after they finished, I said, all right, how did that conversation went? Oh, it went great. Okay, I thought you had communication issues. Well, we do. Well, what
Yeah.
did y'all just do?
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, let me help you guys. Let me help you. You don't have necessarily communication issues
Mm.
because when y'all in an argument, y'all don't have any problem sharing what's on your mind. You have a closeness issue. You're not close. And when you're not close, it hinders communication. Communication is boiled down to two things. First, understanding the components of it. And the second is activating those components to create closeness. Nathan, there it is in a nutshell right there. I love what you said. Marriage, you need to keep it simple. Communication is boiled down to there are some components that you need to understand and consistently follow. By you doing those components, it creates closeness. And if you do those two, you can communicate about anything. So I'm going to break it down.
Okay.
There are 5 components of communication. 5 components. 2 belong to the speaker. 3 belongs to the listener. All right, here they go. The first responsibility of a speaker is to mentally select the words they want to share.
I like that.
Now, what happens there? You slow down. Most people talk out of emotions.
Yeah.
And they end up saying some things that they can't take back. But if
Yep.
you realize every time I need to say something to my spouse, I need to select the words. Well, that's going to slow down some things. Okay. I'm all hyped up. Okay. I need to talk to him. Okay. What's my first responsibility? Well, I need to select the words. Okay. That's going to take some time.
Yeah.
You see, that's
I
going
like
to
it.
slow you down. And that's
Well, it
what you
comes back
want.
to that the idea of intention again. You're not just spouting off whatever. You're being intentional in what you're communicating. And maybe a good side note here, thinking about the words, the way that those words might resonate with our partner, right?
Exactly.
Because we all say words that have these almost kind of like, we kind of set aside the dictionary definition of words a lot of times, and we use these subjective definitions. And then we expect that the person on the other side of us thinks about the word in the same way. And that can really complicate conversation a lot of times. So being super intentional and understanding how that other person will receive those words as well is probably an important part of that.
Exactly. Very much so. So first is mentally select the words. Second responsibility of the speaker is to verbalize it. Is to verbalize those words. All right. That's all the speaker. That's their responsibility. Mentally select and verbalize it. Now,
Okay.
the listener. The listener has three responsibilities. The first responsibility of the listener is to do what? Listen. It's to listen.
Amazing concept.
And I tell, when I share these five, I said, if you violate any of them, your communication is going to tank. So the first one, well, you just saying what's on your mind and just giving reckless words and not mentally, okay, you just violated communication. It's going to suffer. Or if you have it in your mind and they ask you what's going on, nothing, you just violated the second one. So the listener, they need to listen. They don't need to interrupt. They don't need to rebuttal. They need to just listen. That's the first.
And we can laugh at how obvious that may seem, but I think we were even talking about this before we started recording. A lot of times people with the phone or with the watch on their wrist, we're so used to being distracted or multitasking and not actually being blinders on, listening, focused on the person in front of us and what it is that they're saying and what they mean by that, actually paying attention. So as simplistic as that may sound to some people, I think the reality is that most of us need to be reminded to actually truly listen. Super important.
That's right. Very true. Very true. So listen, the second responsibility of the listener, Nathan, is this concept of you are striving to understand what they are saying, but they're also come to a place where what you don't understand, you still must respect. See, that's another one that gets violated because a person is saying, well, I need you to understand exactly what I'm saying. Well, if a woman is talking to a man, normally that happens in a relationship, he may not fully understand it the way she does. I use this in my office. There's a green chair in my office. And I say to the guy, all right, man, this green chair grew up in your wife's home. Now, unfortunately, every time she sat in that green chair, her father would say, you're stupid. So every time she sat in that chair, her father would constantly say, you're stupid. All right. Now let's say her parents died and the chair came to live in your house. Now, husband, all you look and see is what? A green chair. But when she sees that green chair, come on, Nathan, what happens?
Yeah.
And I said, why? You're constantly trying to say to him, this green chair brings up emotions, painful emotions. Yeah. Is he going to understand all of that?
No.
No. And we're just like, I need you to understand this green chair hurts me.
Yeah.
All he sees is a green chair. So I tell her, all you can do is share it.
Hmm.
But trying to make him understand it like you, that can't happen. He didn't grow up with that chair. He doesn't
Although
have that
just to
emotion tied to it.
and you're right. I guess to push back a little bit, this is actually something that Judy mentioned in the last episode. Judy Herman, the therapist that I had in the last episode, she said, I think, and I this isn't verbatim, but she said some version of, a lot of times when we say we don't understand the other person, the reality isn't that we can't understand them. It's just that we're not making enough of an effort to understand them. So when you're talking about something as significant as the associated psychology with a chair, or even something comparable to that, of course, we all carry this kind of backstory that certainly by default can't be understood by or isn't understood by the person just because they don't know of it, right? So
That's right.
then we go back to the communication component, which is the importance of actually sharing our story so that the person on the other side of us can understand us better. But I think a lot of times there's this almost kind of trope, this stereotype that happens, which is that the guy can't understand the girl. And the reality is, I think a lot of times there's just not enough effort made to understand the girl, or vice versa for that matter. It doesn't have to go one way or the other. We're not talking chemistry or physics or rocket science here. We're talking about life experience and how that translates to our emotions. And I'm not sure that we need to overcomplicate it any more than necessary.
Exactly. Exactly. And then the third responsibility of a listener is to summarize what they've heard.
Yeah.
Instead of analyze what they've heard.
Mm.
And see, analyze sounds like, so you think I'm stupid. Okay. Is that what they said? No, they didn't say that. So I had to guide them to,
Yeah.
all right, say exactly what he said.
Yeah.
All right. Men, I need you to just, because when you summarize, you make sure that whatever you heard, you are still seeing it
Mm.
the way they have presented it, instead of you taking it somewhere. And when I sit down with couples and break this out and help them understand it and walk it through them,
Mhm.
their communication totally soars, because now they are taking the time, like you said, and really listening.
Yeah. Just make a little effort, for goodness sake.
Exactly.
Yeah. This is a person that we actually get. This is where conversations about relationships for me get kind of confusing, because I know what it's like to be on the other side of somebody that I am not just crazy about, but intentionally working at developing the relationship with. So I understand what it means to be in that place. And when I hear from other couples, guys or girls, or see observed, the mindset, which is ultimately just a kind of a cynicism and certainly a carelessness about putting even a bit of intention into the relationship, whether it's understanding what the person is saying or doing something as simple. I know that it's very stereotypical, and you go to the therapist's office and they repeat back to you, I heard you say, and then, fill in the blank. But that exercise is actually a really good exercise. It's something that we do in the business world, to go back to the business world. If somebody, or even just going to a job, if they teach us how to do a particular thing at a job, they'll ask us to confirm that we understand what it is that they just explained to us, or
That's
to
right.
demonstrate what they just. So the idea that we would do that in the most important, certainly one of the most important or significant relationships in our life, in a conversation that matters, it's really not so far-fetched. And yet we kind of downplay it or make fun of it or roll our eyes at it. But I think it's actually a really good exercise for the sake of mutual understanding.
Very much so. It really is. So those are key things. Those are three principles that I have seen, I've lived, that really gets couples on the right path to really developing a good. And as you can see, Nathan, none of those are emotional things. I had a couple come to me years ago and just said, Dr. Banks, the feelings are not there anymore. I still love them, but the sparks, the feelings, and since their relationship was based solely on feelings, when those feelings began to fade, they start questioning the relationship.
Yeah.
And man, that has happened to so many times. So I said, all right, this is what I want you guys to do. I want you to come back to me in 3 weeks, and I'm going to give you some things that I want you to do. I said, I want you to go out on a date.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to write each other. I told the man, I want you to write something you treasure about her. I asked the wife, I want you to write something you respect about him.
Hmm.
So I gave him 2 or 3 things. Nathan, when they came that 3rd week, they walked in holding hands.
Nice.
I was like, okay, what's going on? They said, Dr. Banks, by us doing the assignment that you asked us to do, we went out on a date, had a great time.
Mm-hmm.
We wrote the thing, other things we did. And they said, I can't believe it, Dr. Banks. By us doing things, our feelings followed.
Yes.
I said, hey, guys, I didn't get this degree for nothing.
But it's so true, though. I'm so glad that we're finishing on this point, because the assumption, to your point, is, I think probably with most couples, and I'm sure I've been guilty of this at points in my life and relationships. But the assumption is, if I don't feel like it, or if I don't feel good about it, then it's done. I give up.
That's right.
And the reality is, I've been in the fitness space for a long time, and I'm a certified personal trainer, et cetera. So I have experience in this space. But one of the things that I know, and I'm sure you've experienced because you're in great shape too, is that sometimes we don't feel like doing the work.
Exactly.
Right? But the reality is, we just do the work. And then the good feelings come after, when we look in the mirror, we say, oh, look at what I accomplished, right?
That's right.
I may not have felt like getting up at 6 a.m. and going to the gym, or for that matter, at 3 p.m. and going to the gym. But I went and I did the work. And when I look at the results, especially when I do it day after day after day after day after day, I'm going to feel amazing about it. I may not feel great in the moment, but I do the work first, understanding that sometimes I don't always feel like it beforehand, but I'm going to feel great about it after the fact.
That's what it is. And I said, guys, that's the lesson I need to show you. You take the initiative. Your feelings are waiting for you. Instead of you sitting back waiting for your feelings says, you do something intentional, then the feelings will follow.
Brilliant. That's a beautiful way to sum up our conversation. Dr. Banks, first of all, again, thank you for making time to do this today. But you mentioned earlier I think a webinar that you've got coming up, but maybe you could just kind of sum up everything, both the services, the products, the webinars, everything that you've got going on, or a central location that people can go to learn more about that.
I will send you the link.
Okay,
and
perfect.
You could just kind of put it out. But yeah,
we'll put that in the show notes for everybody listening in. Okay.
June 27th, I think it's from 10 to 12. Yeah, 10 to 12 is a virtual masterclass, and we're going to really break down some of these misconceptions about how the world has, just marginalized and made singles feel like they are incomplete. They're only complete when they are in a relationship. And we really want to break some things down and just really help them understand that they are vital, they are important, but here's some things to kind of take a look at.
Okay, perfect. So I'll make sure for anybody listening in, you can just check the show notes for this episode when it comes out. I'll put the link to that masterclass in the show notes, along with Dr. Banks' website. You can reach him through that. Dr. Banks, thanks again for making time. Truly appreciate you doing this for us today.
Excellent. My pleasure. Thank you, my friend.